Ever try to get a baby to smile? It can seem close to impossible. And then suddenly there it is, that elusive, seemingly joyous grin. Well, it turns out those smiles aren't spontaneous, they're strategic. Researchers have found that when babies smile, it's for a reason. They want whoever they're interacting with, typically a parent, to smile back. And they time it just so, a smile here and a smile there. The researchers call it sophisticated timing. The study is in the journal PLOS One. The researchers enlisted real mothers and infants and quantified their interactions, which fell into 4 categories. 1, babies wanted to maximize the amount of time smiling at their mothers. 2, they wanted to maximize the time the mother smiled at them. 3, they wanted to experience simultaneous smiling. And 4, no smiling at all. By studying when smiles happened and what the subsequent effect was, the investigators were able to figure out that for mothers, the goal 70% of the time was to be smiling simultaneously, while for babies, 80% of the time, they just wanted their mother smiling at them. So mothers want the interaction, while babies just want to be smiled at. So your baby may not be able to feed itself, talk, or even turn over yet. But when it comes to smiles, babies seem to know exactly what they're up to.
And I am the professor of children's literature at Newcastle University, and I want to write a very short introduction to children's literature because although here in Britain one of the longest and most distinguished traditions of creating books for children, perhaps the longest and most distinguished in the world. We often take them for granted and we don't pay enough attention to what a remarkable cultural resource they are for adults and kind of cultural work they do for children and the way that they have served writers and illustrators as a cultural space for creativity subversion and opportunities to experiment with new ideas. So what kind of cultural work the children's books do? Well, at the level of individual child, this is one of the places where children learn the vocabularies, get the vicarious experiences, and see the images of the world that help them think about how the world works and where they fit into it. Because children's books are first places that children encounter these things, they are often very direct, as a source of information about what a particular period thinks, including what it thinks a child is, what a child needs to know, what childhood looks like. Sometimes when we are looking at children's books from the past, it is very important to notice these kinds of children who aren't there, for instance. So that is one of the things that we have in children's books. So, we were founded just over 10 years ago, when I was in the Royal Academy, a museum in the centre of London, with my 3 children, at the Aztec exhibition. I don't know if any of you saw it. I had an older child and 2 younger children, twins, strapped in a pushchair, and one of my children, 3 years old, shouted, and I've never denied he shouted. He shouted, "Monster, monster." At this statue, which looked just like a monster, had snakes for hair, a big beak for a nose. And I thought, this is fantastic, I've got a 3-year-old that's appreciating art, how good can it get? So I bent down and I said, yes, it looks just like a monster, and, at that moment, a room warden came over, a gallery assistant came over and said we were being too noisy, and threw us out. Wrong family. I was, at that time, a journalist with The Guardian newspaper, and 2 days later wrote a big piece in The Guardian about being thrown out of the Royal Academy. What was really interesting was, by the end of that day, we had, at the paper, over 500 emails from other families saying, "Museums aren't working for us. Let's try and make it work." So, that's what we did. In The Guardian, we set up a campaign. We called it the Kids in Museums campaign, but it didn't really exist. It was just a few pages. We ran loads of stories on it. I began touring the country talking about how to make your museum family friendly.
Language death is not mainstream theatre. It is not mainstream anything. Can you imagine Hollywood taking it on? It's so far outside the mindsets of most people that they have a difficulty appreciating what the crisis is all about because they're not used to thinking about language as an issue in itself. Somehow we need to change these mindsets. We need to get people thinking more about language, more explicitly, more intimately, more enthusiastically. Interest in language is certainly there in the general population. Most people are fascinated by such topics as where words come from, or what the origin of their town's name is, or whether their baby's name means anything. And they're certainly prepared to play Scrabble and a host of other language games ad infinitum. And you get language games on radio and television too, but a willingness to focus that interest on general issues, a preparedness to take on board the emotion and drama inherent in the situation of language endangerment is not something that happens much.
Subscribe our channel to get weekly and monthly PTE exam predictions, according to your exam date. Please like, comment and share this video. Your appreciation is biggest motivation for us. See you in next video.